Hello friends, Jules here from FGS, and you know what's better than one game? Two games, and thankfully, out of sheer kindness from some developers, sometimes you will be able to find brilliant mini-games or even standalone experiences hidden in your favourite titles. Now while you might have to work hard to find these bonus sections, trust me, the games on this list are more than worth it. So let's have a chat, as I'm Jules, this is FGS, and these are 10 amazing games hidden in other games. However, you know the drill, I couldn't do this alone, so I've picked Derek Stein's comment from last week's episode, which will appear as a fully fledged entry in this list. And if you want to be part of next week's video, then have a think on what you pick as the creepiest boss battle in video game history. Ooh. But for now, let's get our inception on and talk about games within games. Number 10, TimeSplitters 2, Homefront: The Revolution. Now, if you were left crestfallen by how aggressively mediocre FPS sequel Homefront: The Revolution was, fear not, because there's a far greater value proposition secretly ensconced within it. Ensconced? Who talks like that? Me, that's who. Shortly after release, players discovered that one of the game's arcade cabinets allowed players to play through the beloved Siberia and Chicago levels from the legendary 2002 shooter TimeSplitters 2. But you know what? There's so much more to it than that. You see, years later it was revealed that Homefront: The Revolution actually contained TimeSplitters 2 in its entirety, in glorious 4K no less. But there was just one problem. The programmer who put it in there forgot the cheat code to unlock it. Cool. But thankfully the internet came in clutch, putting out the call, resulting in the correct cheat code being discovered mere days later. And just like that, a glorified drink coaster of a game cemented its legacy by giving the world a long-requested port of one of the greatest shooters ever made. Number 9, Zork: Call of Duty Black Ops. Now props to Activision for having the sense of humour to sneak a classic game inside of two games that couldn't possibly be more polar opposite. In Call of Duty Black Ops and Black Ops Cold War, players who access the CIA computer terminal can play the classic 1977 text adventure Zork by typing in, well, Zork. Indeed, Zork's totally stripped down style, defined only by white on black text, excellent writing and little else, is the pure inverse of Call of Duty's mega budget adrenalized Michael Bay on steroids action. While few likely spent hours of their precious Call of Duty time playing Zork instead, this comparatively lo-fi text adventure could certainly provide some welcome respite between rounds of ganking noobs online. As for how Activision were able to include Zork in Call of Duty at all, well, they actually bought the developer Infocom way in 1986, only to shut them down a few short years later. Yes, you know, Activision's gonna Activision after all. Number 8, Outrun: Shenmue 2. Now, while it's considerably more common nowadays for video games to feature arcade machines with fully playable retro titles, this was a decidedly more novel prospect at the turn of the century. And that is when the first two Shenmue games were released. The original Shenmue, I'm not going to do it a third time, allowed players to visit an arcade and play on classic titles developed by Shenmue's own creator, Yu Suzuki, such as Space Harrier and Hang On. But Shenmue 2 took this to a whole other level by stocking its arcade with Suzuki's utterly goated arcade racing masterpiece, Outrun. As true today as it was in 2001 when Shenmue 2 came out, Outrun is an uncommonly well-aged retro classic, beautiful to behold and a breakneck joy to play. While it was tough to justify sinking hours into Outrun when Shenmue 2's lush open world had so much to offer, it was certainly a welcome added value pack-in, and quite the unique concept in this gaming era. Number 7, the Alcazar of Grief: Blasphemous. Okay, so first off, let's get the obvious right out of the way. Blasphemous and its sumptuous sequel are so utterly brilliant that it feels like a cardinal sin to have not played them. The absolutely dangerous blend of Metroidvania exploration, Souls-like razor-type combat, and of course, that outstanding art and sound direction breathed life into Catholic guilt in a manner that I never thought possible, nor ever knew I wanted to see. This game will put holes in you so thoroughly that even Jesus Christ's own stigmata look like paper cuts by comparison. And so there may well be times in the original Blasphemous that you just want to kick back and try to relax a little. Well, as Derek Stein points out, there's always the secret arcade that you can visit to unwind in. And no, you didn't miss here, there is an actual secret arcade cabinet within Blasphemous called the Alcazar of Grief, in which you play through 8-bit levels in order to find golden skulls, and your reward for doing so is a very cool looking skin. So not only do you have a truly offbeat moment in an otherwise very serious game, but it's brilliant fun and gives you a reward for beating it. Hell yeah! Oh, dang it, now I've got to flashlight myself. I'll be right back. Ow! Number 6. Metroid Prime. Now these days, it's not at all uncommon for new entries into major gaming franchises to include the earlier games as Easter eggs and secret unlockables, but back in 2002, Metroid Prime had a rather eccentric way of doing so. You see, rather than simply make the original Metroid accessible via a cheat code, players had to first beat Metroid Fusion, which was a side-scroller released on the Game Boy Advance the very same day that Prime landed on the GameCube. After beating Fusion, players then had to connect their Game Boy Advance to their GameCube with the Fusion cartridge inside, which in turn would unlock the OG NES Metroid within Prime. Now granted, that's a fair faff, and considering that it requires you to buy not one but 2 games, it becomes an almost hilariously expensive way to revisit a retro classic, especially when the original Metroid is now available to play on the Nintendo Switch Online. Number 5. Demon Tower: Night in the Woods. Night in the Woods is one of the most distinctive and unforgettable adventure games of the last decade, and because its enticingly mysterious story, gorgeous art direction, and brilliant characters apparently weren't enough, it also includes a mini-game that is basically a full-fat title in its own right, and that game is Demon Tower, a Dark Souls-esque hack-and-slasher that's accessible from May's laptop after Angus fixes it. It's an unforgiving yet compulsively addictive experience that can easily take up as much time as Night in the Woods' own 6 to 8 hour critical path. In that respect, it's highly laudable that developers Infinite Fall included Demon Tower as a freebie rather than releasing it as a separate commercial release, which they clearly could have done given its immense popularity. Nobody needed Demon Tower concealed within this endlessly charming indie adventure, but often the very best games are those that you never knew you ever wanted. Number 4. Maniac Mansion: Day of the Tentacle. LucasArts' Day of the Tentacle, a follow-up to their beloved Maniac Mansion, is undisputably one of the greatest video games ever made. It's a relentlessly entertaining graphic adventure that remains a joy to play more than 30 years after its release. And because being a stonking improvement over its predecessor wasn't good enough, Day of the Tentacle also includes the full version of Maniac Mansion as a cheeky Easter egg. You see, players who boot up the computer in Weird Ed's bedroom will be able to play Maniac Mansion from start to finish. A cheer-worthy act of generosity on the part of the developers, and the sort of charitable act that we rarely see in modern games, sadly. Even accepting that the sequel marks a tectonic leap from its predecessor, enough so that you might actually find going back a touch awkward, giving players 2 brilliant generation and genre-defining games for the price of 1, that's absolutely wild. Number 3. Geometry Wars: Project Gotham Racing 2. Now here's a really fun and unexpected one. In hit racer Project Gotham Racing 2, the game's garage contains an arcade cabinet with Geometry Wars, a then brand new retro-styled multi-directional shooter similar to Asteroids. Hilariously, Geometry Wars wasn't merely an ephemeral curiosity which players toyed with for 5 minutes before getting back to burning rubber. It proved immensely popular with the player base, enough so that developer Bizarre Creations released a standalone follow-up, Geometry Wars Retro Evolved, which was at the time one of the most downloaded Xbox Live arcade games ever. In addition to including a version of Geometry Wars in Project Gotham Racing 4, this most unexpected franchise continued to flourish in its own right, with a grand total of 5 standalone titles being released between 2005 and 2016. Somewhat ironically, this allowed Geometry Wars to easily outlive the franchise that spawned it, given that Project Gotham was sadly put out to pasture way back in 2007 with its 4th mainline game. Number 2. Getting Over It with Bennett Foddy: Just Cause 4. Now this one is admittedly a teensy bit of a stretch, but it's so damn fun and unexpected that we're including it anyway. In Just Cause 4, there's a deeply bizarre but utterly brilliant Easter egg that's basically a AAA mini remake of the quirky indie hit Getting Over It with Bennett Foddy. That game tasks players with hauling a man up a huge mountain using only a giant hammer, and for some reason the man is sitting in a large black cauldron. In Just Cause 4's region of Picos Helados, players can find the very same cauldron on a distinctive white rock, where interacting with it will initiate a bite-sized version of Getting Over It that, with its maddening controls and physics, is no less brilliantly infuriating to play. This wasn't merely just a cute nod from Just Cause developers Avalanche Studios though. They actually got Getting Over It's Bennett Foddy himself to contribute new voiced philosophical dialogue to accompany your desperate attempts to fling Rico up that bloody mountain. And number 1, Frog Fractions 2: Glitter Mitten Grove. And finally, Glitter Mitten Grove. It's an especially curious case here because this game actually only existed to act as a decoy, a kind of Trojan horse within which the developer's real game is hidden. Glitter Mitten Grove was a city-building game released in late 2016, several weeks after it was found to house the main game that its developer was working on, the much-anticipated edutainment spoof sequel, Frog Fractions 2. After the original Frog Fractions was a surprise hit, developer Jim Storm Dancer announced a follow-up in 2014, but told Kickstarter investors that in the series' anarchic left-field spirit, he wouldn't officially announce the sequel's release, nor even formally name it Frog Fractions Fractions 2. And so, in late 2016, inquisitive players finally solved a mind-bogglingly complex alternate reality game, which then triggered an update in Glittermitten Grove that made Frog Fractions 2 available. Though Frog Fractions 2 lacked the BAM! Surprise shock factor of the original, it was still a more than worthy successor, and an astonishing instance of a game developer committing fully to the bit, and then some. And there we go, my friends, those were 10 amazing games hidden in other games. I hope that you enjoyed that, and please let me know what you thought about it down in the comments section below. And while you're down there, why not put your suggestion for the creepiest boss battle in video game history? Ooh. But before I go, I just want to say one thing. Hope you're treating yourself well, my friend, treating yourself with that love and respect. And I also just want to say a big thank you as well for all the support we've been receiving on this list series here. I love going into the comments and finding out all of the stories that have affected you, and also your suggestions that then go forward into these episodes. It's a give and take, and I absolutely love being able to do that with you. And let's carry on this positivity by just reminding ourselves that we are absolute big ledges. We deserve love and respect and all the success in the world, and we are not going to let anything or anyone else tell us otherwise, all right? Now get out there and smash your life goals today. As always, I've been Jules. You have been awesome. Never forget that. I'll speak to you soon. Bye.